Hi, I'm Leslie Przybylek, Senior Curator at the Senator John Heinz History Center. And in honor of National Nurses Day, which is May 6th, I wanted to take a few moments to talk about a woman whose story is represented in our World War II collection by multiple artifacts, including a U.S. Army footlocker and a Zippo lighter. Mary T. Sullivan was originally a native of Bradford, Pennsylvania, also not coincidentally home of that Zippo lighter, and she was studying nursing at the St. Francis School of Nursing in Lawrenceville when World War II broke out. Now keep in mind that when Pearl Harbor was bombed, there were less than 1,000 nurses on the U.S. Army rolls, and like so many other branches of service during World War II, it was clear that many, many more people would be needed. So recruitment drives were launched, and Mary, along with some of her other classmates at the St. Francis School of Nursing, chose to participate in an accelerated nursing program where she would get her degree faster in exchange for service in the U.S. Army. And so she ended up being posted overseas. Now, in that respect, Mary's story was similar to some 70,000 American women who would eventually serve in either the Army or the Navy as nurses during World War II. And not one of those women was drafted. All of them were volunteers. And you know, there's sometimes this misconception that Army nurses are like auxiliaries, they're like the WWIIs, for example, and that's not the case. The U.S. Army nurses were regular Army, and 215 of them were actually killed during the course of World War II. So Mary served with the 230th Hospital Division, and she served in the European theater, primarily in England, and in fact she was a psychiatric nurse and assisted soldiers who were being brought back to England from the European theater, and especially after Normandy and the D-Day invasion. So it's really difficult for us to even understand just the kinds of injuries and the trauma that she faced. But one of the reasons that Mary's footlocker is one of my favorite World War II artifacts in the collection is because of this larger story it tells us about a commitment to service and then repeated service. You know, Mary fulfilled her duties in the European theater, she took leave, and like so many other nurses, she was posted to further duty and was ready to return to service in the Pacific theater. Mary had seen the VE Day celebrations in England, but knew she was going to continue to serve. And in fact, her footlocker was packed and loaded onto a ship ready to head to the Philippines. And anybody who's familiar at all with the story of World War II knows that for however awful service in the European theater was, and it was truly terrible, that the reputation of the Pacific was even far worse. And yet nurses like Mary were willing to continue serving. Now, as it turned out, in August, although her trunk was loaded on the ship, bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan, and the war ended. So Mary never had to go. She returned to the States. She continued her nursing studies, getting a BS in nursing from the University of Pittsburgh in 1948, and then returned to St. Francis in Lawrenceville, where she served for many years as a registered nurse in the intensive care unit. So I feel that Mary is a wonderful example of these stories to think about as we contemplate a new generation of first responders who are responding to a different global crisis today. So think about National Nurses Day, and thanks so much for watching.